You have poured your heart and your soul into creating powerful podcast episodes. Your insights are golden, your storytelling is on point, but what happens next? Are your listeners even taking action? Are they doing that next step that you want them to do? Are you leaving money on the table by not telling them what they need to do next? Today, we're talking about calls to actions or CTAs that are going to motivate your listeners, grow your business, and allow you to connect with your audience on a deeper level. Welcome to Podcasting Unlocked, the show for purpose-driven podcasters. I'm Alicia Galati, founder of Galati Media, and I'm here to share actionable strategies to help you amplify your message and grow your audience. Hello and welcome back. I'm so excited you're here. The first question that I ask folks who say that they want to use their podcast to generate leads for their business is, when was the last time you told people what you do? And I think so often we imagine calls to actions or CTAs as these elaborate hoaxes or almost tricks that we're trying to push people through. It is not a sales pitch. It is an invitation. That is all that your call to action is. And so let's reframe it before we even get into the strategy behind some really good calls to actions or how to do it properly. I want us to release this idea that our listeners are not adults who can make decisions for themselves. We are simply inviting them to have a deeper relationship. And if they decide not to, then that's okay. But we did our part in inviting them by opening the door and giving them that option. The next important thing about a call to action is that it is clear. When I usually ask people, well, when's the last time you said how to work with you? They'll say like, well, I talk about how I help my clients. It's in my show notes. Listen, our podcast listeners are busy. They are distracted. They have a million things going on. Most likely they are listening to us as they're doing those million and one other things. And so we need to make sure that we are making it so easy and simple for them to follow that call to action. Break it down in a really simple way. So instead of giving them a huge URL to follow or a way to connect with you that maybe doesn't really work for them, like sending an email, no, make it super simple. I like to do this by buying URLs that are really easy to follow. I have every URL possible, from my name to Galati Media to Listeners to Leads to Podcasting Unlocked to Successful Podcasting Unlocked to my all-time favorite, which is helpmypod.com. And I wanted to, after many moons of having different URLs, have something that was so easy, was so simple and memorable that no one would have to worry about how in the world is this spelled. Helpmypod.com. Very easy, that call to action. And then I let them know, hey, if you go there to that website, you will see an option for a freebie, which is 15 ways to improve your podcast. And you are able to book a free consultation with me. We can talk through your struggles and I can let you know some tips and tricks to try, or if it makes sense for us to have a strategy session or for you to work with my team. That is easy. It's an easy call to action and it's easy to spell and it makes sense. So clarity is key here. I also want you to understand that when we are telling people how to take action in our podcast, most of the time we are doing it after having given a ton of value for free. So by offering a call to action that provides even more value, you are simply continuing the cycle of giving and making them more likely to take that next step with you. So what does an effective CTA or call to action look like? It could be as simple as leave a review. If your podcast goal is more engagement, then leave a review is a perfect way to ensure that your listeners are engaging with your content. It could be send me a DM. Here's my user, or you can find it in the show notes. If your goal is to increase your email list with your podcast, then download my freebie. This is what it's called, is a good call to action. And here's a quick way, an easy way to find it. If you are looking to generate leads with your podcast, a good call to action is book a call with me to learn more about this, right? Those are very simple. So you want to state the action that you want them to have. Next, you want to explain the benefit. People are always wondering what's in it for me or what makes your thing different, right? Instead of just saying, check out my website, you could say, visit my website to download a free guide that will help you solve this problem that you are having. And then I want you to give them a clear path that is a simple and memorable URL like helpmypod.com, something that avoids long and complicated links. You could also ask them to go to the show notes, but sometimes people might not always do that. And it's important that you are giving them something verbally to go to if they need to. So the way to create that effective call to action, we'll go through those again. Number one, state the action. What do you want them to do? Number two, explain the benefit that'll help you solve this problem. And number three, provide a clear path on where you want them to go next. Now let's talk about where to place that call to action because, of course, we want to make sure that it's located in a place that makes sense for that listener. One of the best ways to do this is to look at your podcast analytics. And I want you to go to both Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Under Apple Podcasts, you will see a way to see what the consumption rate of your podcast is. On Spotify, you'll also be able to see how much of an episode people tend to consume. This allows you to see, all right, if most of the people are consuming around 70% of my podcast, I want to make sure that my call to action is not in the outro. Make sure that I'm giving them a clear call to action before that 75% mark. If you are not sure or you don't have enough data on these apps to be able to give you clear information, I would recommend having it before the 60% mark. But here are a few places that you could potentially put those call to actions. The intro is a great place for a quick and low friction call to action, like hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. It could also be, hey, this episode is sponsored by my business. Here's a real quick thing of what we do. Both of those prime your listeners to take action in the future. The mid-roll is another great place and a pretty typical place for a call to action. This is where your listeners are the most engaged. They are really into the conversation. They are excited and it hits it before that 60% mark, like I said. Now here you might go a little deeper, maybe a minute or a minute and a half to talk through what it is that you do. You don't want to make it too long because you don't want to distract from the actual content of the episode. One of the things that I love about using Buzzsprout as my podcast hosting platform is that it allows you to have multiple mid-rolls running at the same time. And so if I have a 45-minute discussion, I can have 3 mid-rolls in that entire discussion. And every single one of those can be different. Now, would I recommend doing that? Probably not. I would recommend just having 1 or 2 in that space so that it has more of a break between them and we're not bombarding our listener with too many mid-rolls. I was just talking to a client recently about what kinds of things they should be promoting in their mid-roll. And in the case of her products, I said, I would love to see a mid-roll that is your freebie, a mid-roll that is your low ticket offer. Maybe it is a workshop, maybe it is a worksheet, something that is less than $100. And then I would like to see a mid-roll that is your higher ticket one-on-one services or coaching. So that allowed her to have multiple different ones funneling between all of her different episodes to achieve the goal of moving the listener to take action on her products and her services. Here are a few different types of calls to action that you can use for your show depending on what your goal is. If your goal is growth and community, then your call to action for that might be about asking for reviews, ratings, and social media followings to increase your reach. You also might have a call to action that is for your membership or for your free community. If your goal is lead generation, then your call to action would be a free, high value resource like a checklist or a workbook that would require them to give you their email address. Now, that is going to be an easy way to turn that listener into a lead because you're able to nurture them and continue the relationship outside of the apps and outside of the podcast. If your goal is direct monetization, then you'll want to promote a low ticket offer or a paid workshop or a direct service to what you provide. Now, let's round it out with how to authentically deliver this, right? We don't want to be robotic about it. We want to make sure that we are being genuine and that we are making it a very easy yes for that listener. So, here are 3 quick tips for that. Number 1, be genuine. Your tone should be conversational and sincere, not pushy, not demeaning. We need to make sure that we are having a call to action that feels really natural for the listener. And so practice it a few times to ensure that you have the best version of that call to action. We had a guest on when we talked more about using video for our podcast and like creating engaging video. And our guest for that episode, I couldn't tell you exactly which one. We'll have it in the show notes. But in that episode, she talked about how she put a picture of her grandmother right above her camera and how by having that right there, it allowed her to really create content that was talking to that person, that one person that she really loved, that she wanted to share this message with. And so have something like that there, pro tip, to be able to create something that's a little more genuine and a little more natural. Next, I want you to connect to your story. Make sure that you frame the ask in the context of that episode's content so that it feels like it's relevant to the conversation. So maybe your call to actions aren't mid rolls or dynamic. Instead, you stop your episode right there. You say, look, we've been talking about this topic. I'm sure you found it interesting. I really want to make sure that we're giving additional value. Here are some things that you can go do next if you're really enjoying this content. All right, back to the episode. That allows the person to feel like it's more genuine, it's more natural, and it connects with the flow of that podcast episode. Another tip is to acknowledge what it takes for them to actually take action. Say something like, I know that you're busy, but if you have a moment, this would be a huge help, especially when you're asking your podcast listeners to share the episode with a friend, saying, look, I know we're busy. I know that you have so much going on, but I would love it if you could take a moment and share this with a friend. It really helps my podcast be able to get in front of new people, and I would really appreciate it. The way that I made it sound natural and connected it to, hey, look, this allows me to grow my show, get it in front of the right people, and I appreciate you. These are all ways to really authentically deliver that call to action. All right, I know that creating calls to actions can be very overwhelming and frustrating. I would recommend that if you are wanting to work on this a little more or craft a call to action that makes sense for your specific podcast goals, book a strategy session with me. We can talk through what is going to work and what might not work for your specific audience. And we'll give you some templates to use so that way you feel comfortable and confident in creating that call to action that'll get you the results that you want and need. All right. Until next time, happy podcasting.